Good evening and warm welcome to the Technology Leadership Series, PSU, a virtual summit on role of technology in transforming PSUs into globally competitive industrial powerhouses. The event, powered by IBM, organized by ELITS with the knowledge partner eGov Magazine and Portal. So as the name suggests, this event is about PSUs. India's public sector enterprises are amongst the key growth engines of the country. However, to achieve sustained growth, public sector units need to modernize their IT infrastructures as advanced in technology will call for greater automation and continuous business process engineering in order to remain globally competitive and meet challenges of the future. So today's program, comprising of distinguished speakers from the PSU's ecosystem, will deliberate upon how modern, resilient, and secure IT infrastructure can empower India's PSUs to stay ahead of the curve and become globally competitive industrial powerhouses. And today we are honored that we have with us very distinguished panel here. And it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers and the moderator of this virtual summit on PSUs. I'll first introduce Shri B.N. Sarkar. Shri B.N. Sarkar is the Chairman and Managing Director of Central Electronics Limited. He holds a BTech degree in Electrical Engineering from NIT, Durgapur, and postgraduate in Computer Control Power System and Drives from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Prior to this, Mr. Sarkar had worked for the Government of India in Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, DSIR, Ministry of Science and Technology as Scientific Officer, Grade 2. He has been particularly engaged in promoting innovative technology and has been instrumental in sensitizing Indian industries and R&D institutions towards increasing the technology content in the products and services offered by them and enhancing countries' technology-intensive exports. Welcome, Shri B.N. Sarkar. And the second speaker of the day is Shri K.S. Kalidas. Shri K.S. Kalidas is working as Chief General Manager for IT in NTPC Limited. Mr. Kalidas holds a BTech degree in Electrical Engineering from NIT Calicut and an MBA from IMT Ghaziabad. Mr. Kalidas is a career NTPC officer with a vast experience of over 36 years in NTPC, of which he was in operations and maintenance for over 22 years in operations and 14 years in information technology. I also introduced Shri Abhishek Agarwal. Shri Abhishek Agarwal is working as Chief General Manager and Head of IT in EESL. Abhishek is having a bachelor's and master's engineering degree in computer sciences. Prior to EESL, he has worked in DRDO, Maruti, Wipro, Airtel, and Vodafone, to name a few. He has over 25 plus years of industry experience. His expertise lies in handling large-scale transformation programs, digital strategy, IT strategy, and ERP. Abhishek is recipient of many awards, which includes Transformative and Disruptive CIO 100 in 2016 and 19. Our next speaker of the session is Shri J. Murugadasa. Shri J. Murugadasa is working as General Manager of IT in Shipping Corporation of India Limited. Mr. Murugadasa is having more than 30 plus years of IT experience. During his various stints, he has handled widely challenging ERP and other IT implementation projects. He commands a motivated in-house team to take up new IT initiatives. The next speaker of the session is Shri Karthik Neelakandan. He heads the sales and client services functions for Infosys India. He has been with Infosys for over 20 years, prior to which he was an entrepreneur in retail and edutech space for half a decade. For a significant part of his Infosys career, he was based in UK and Europe, managing Infosys relationships with their large banking and financial services clients. Since 2014, he has been part of India's business. His current remit is to develop and the domestic market and manage clients across both government and private sectors across all industry verticals. Infosys India processes over 90% of the country's tax payments of over 20 lakh crores on its platforms across CBDT, GSTN, and customs excise. Karthik's team are responsible for key metrics including revenue, margin, client satisfaction, and operations. Karthik represents Infosys India across multiple government and industry consultations, partner and analyst meetings, and other such forums. Karthik is an engineering graduate from NIT Trichy and has completed his master's in Arizona State University. Another renowned speaker we have is Sri Ravi Jain. Sri Ravi Jain manages IBM systems for India and South Asia. He is responsible for IBM Z Systems and Linux One, IBM Cognitive Systems, and IBM Storage Solutions. In this role, he drives IT infrastructure solutions that are driving digital transformation, hybrid cloud, and AI. After joining IBM as a campus recruit in June 2002, he worked at various locations and held positions in sales, product management, sales management, and business management. Having led teams to deliver a variety of hardware architectures that support core applications, modern data platforms, modern analytics, hybrid cloud deployments, and artificial intelligence, he developed understanding of multiple industries. Ravi holds a BTech in mechanical engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, 1999 batch, and a postgraduate diploma in business management from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, 2002 batch. He was awarded the gold medal for best all-round performance at IIM Bangalore. Our moderator for this wonderful panel discussion is Shri Abhijit Mukhopadhyay. Shri Abhijit Mukhopadhyay is Senior Fellow with Observer Research Foundation, ORF's Economy and Growth Program. His main areas of research include macroeconomics and public policy, with core research areas in monetary economics and the political economy of finance. Abhijit has extensive experience in economic and policy research, academia, business school teaching, and academic administration. He has a keen interest in micro and macro business environment, sectoral industry case studies, and issues related to public finance, agriculture, and development economies. Abhijit is widely published in various academic journals, periodicals, and online platforms. Abhijit is a postgraduate in economics from the famed Jawaharlal Nehru University and graduate in economics from the Calcutta University. So here you can see we have distinguished panel to talk upon the technology transformation in PSU sector. So here with this, I request Abhijit to please take over and set the context of this panel discussion. Over to you, Mr. Abhijit.
Yeah, all right, thank you. First of all, thanks a lot to Elets Technomedia for giving me this opportunity to, talk on this, which I believe is a very relevant topic in today's times, which is role of technology for transforming PSUs into globally competitive industrial powerhouse. Because essentially, when the central government is talking about an Atmanirbhar Bharat, then what actually it means is that, that in particularly in manufacturing and of course in the next step of services, definitely there has to be some amount of self-reliance, in India, which is a good thing, which I believe, personally, I believe which is a good thing because after pandemic, what is going to happen is probably clear to everyone who actually follows the global economics, trade and business, that most of the major countries, including all G7, G20, or I'm talking about all the major economies, they will try to look inward to protect their own domestic employment and domestic demand and other kind of things. So obviously, the trade will suffer, in the longer run, in the time horizon of 3 to 5 years, I can see that ultimately there will be some deceleration in trade and even in international business probably. Yes, probably we'll have growth in some of the sectors, some of the segments, but then of course, there will be a lot of glitches which will keep on happening for quite some time now. So essentially now we have to look inwards. We also have to look inwards, both for our market, the consumption market, and also to develop our own manufacturing and other things. But it is easier said than done. Then the point is that not only this government, even the earlier government, earlier UPA governments, they tried to uh, somehow increase the productivity in the manufacturing sector. And services was doing well in sporadically in the recent past. But then earlier even services was the sector which was actually holding up the economy all alone in a way. But manufacturing could not. In that context, I believe the idea of putting a lot of technology into the public sector units and then make them more profitable is a good idea. There is no doubt about it. But having said that, as I said, that it is no easier said than done. And secondly, what I believe that there are a lot of nuances also, because whether each and every public sector units will be able to adopt that kind of an technological infrastructure. A, B, then if that is done, then what will be the cost benefit analysis? Because of course, if you start implementing, if you start adopting some amount of new kind of technology infrastructure in your own company, then it involves a lot of cost. And then one has to do some amount of cost benefit analysis also, company to company, and it will differ company to company. Some companies will definitely benefit. I don't have any doubt in my head about that. But some companies may not benefit that much. So then those companies have to somehow figure that out. There has to be some amount of cost benefit analysis. Then see, the question comes in that, once in a country like ours where we have, official workforce is somewhere around, roughly, I can't say the exact figure, but it is somewhere around, your workforce is somewhere around 40 crore. And in reality, it will be much bigger. I think there will be a lot of voluntary unemployment. So what will be the repercussion on the employment unemployment? And the one related question D is that, then how do you do the skilling, reskilling, training, and how do you, approach the entire, what in a typical economic textbook, we say that labor angle of it, because, you have labor, you have capital in both the hands. And technology in a way actually changes your production function from the capital side, because it gives you a higher kind of a production function. But anyway, I'll not stand between the excellent panel which is today. I would rather request all the speakers to very briefly tell their own organizations activities in the context of this what I just said. And secondly, that how do they believe that an improved technology is going to help in future? Not only their company, also the Indian economy in general. So I believe that you confine yourselves to 5 minutes, and then once the 5 minutes is over, of course very gently I will tell you that your 5 minutes is over. Then please wind up, because then we have to do it on time. So the first speaker, Sri B.N. Sarkar from Central Electronics Limited. I would request him to start. You have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself, please.
Audible?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Myself, B.N. Sarkar, CMD, Central Electronics Limited. First of all, I give my thanks to the organizer to discuss about the topics which has been chosen is really relevant in the today's date. See, everywhere, from every corner, today we are discussing about the Atmanirbhar Bharat and self-sustainable. In this regard, to begin with, I'll talk about the synergize in our company and what we are doing in this area. Central Electronics Limited is a PSU under the Ministry of Science and Technology. We are dealing with the industrial R&D all over the country. At the other hand, we have a giant organization, CSR, Central Electronics Scientific Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, having the biggest organization in this country as a lab. And CL is working as a model organization, taking the technology from the lab, CSL labs, DRDO's labs, IIT's technology, and we are manufacturing and commercializing. So we are a model organization of this department. In this regard, I am happy to share some of the technologies which are very, very useful and made for the India and made for the India's self-sustainability in this particular area. Mainly in the defense area, last 2 decades, we are manufacturing phase control modules. That is basically the radar, heart of the radar. And we are the only one in this country, and it is a substitute of the import, and government is having heavy import dollar currency. There are many products like radon. Recently, we have set up the radon manufacturing setup. We have done within our company, and we are the only one of radon manufacturing. Radon is basically the nose of the missiles. So several sizes of the radons can be manufactured under this setup, and we have that technology has been taken from the DRDOs, and the manufacturing facilities has been developed, and we have started commercializing. So it has a huge future, and it will give as an example of self-sustainability of the country. We have manufacture, there are many technologies like say Drishti. Drishti is another important technology that has been developed with the technology taken from the NAL, National Aerospace Limited from Bangalore. It is a CSL lab, and so far it was importing. That Drishti basically it is a weather visibility report. It gives the weather visibility report. Based on that, flight landing and takeoff takes place, and we are able to manufacture that Drishti in our manufacturing setup. There are technologies for laser fencing. There are technologies for bulletproof jacket. That whole technology has been taken from the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, and we will manufacture within our country. See, there are many other technologies also. We have taken the technologies from ISRO for satellite and all these things. And we have the other vertical areas in railway manufacturing. We are 4 decades, we are supplying to railway for safety measurement of signal axle counter systems as a security of them. And almost 40 to 60% market share in the Indian Railway with us. So really, we are very much proud because the indigenous technology and developed ourselves, which is basically it is a arm of the self-sustainability, and this way we are helping in this country. See, and if we see financial condition of this organization, last 4 years we are really focusing on the Atmanirbhar Bharat and developing our technology. Based on that, that growth of this company is really enormous. And see, if I say simple, if I give the example from the last year to this year, last year around 4 crore, and this year we are expecting around 30 crores profit of this company. It is a small company, but I feel it is a big jumping of this company, and all because of this theme which has been taken in this forum, and because of the technology development, and we are doing the technology development which is nobody is doing in this country, and which is for the country and for the nation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sri Shankar. Next speaker will be Sri K.S. Kalidas from NTPC Limited. Mr. Kalidas.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes,
Am I
yes.
audible? Okay. Very, very good afternoon.
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Yeah. I think the theme is very apt. What I would say is that today is the topic is technological intervention to improve the competitiveness of PSU. What I would say is that today we are in such a situation that it is not only competitiveness, it is survival. Let me tell you one thing, because we being in the power sector, when last March when this lockdown was declared, of course everybody had a choice not to come to office, but then we being the power sector, we had to be 24/7 on also. So assume a situation where we were totally cut off, how we would have managed it. So that is where the need of the use of technology. Let me tell you, yes, we had initially some hitches, but then we could manage it, and our operation was not affected in the least, thanks to technology only. Yes, it is not that we started working just after the lockdown. We were working in this direction. Yes, the lockdown gave us more momentum. Of course, it's certain things which we thought it will take time, then things came overnight also. That was the advantage. So there is no doubt that technology is now is the main thing. And we being in a power sector, power sector, the basic technology of power generation is it is same for years together. The only way we can improve the efficiency, we can do more things is only by intervention of technology. So there is no doubt about that, and we are adopting technology with that sense only. So when we talk of technology, see, basic technologies are everywhere. We are also on ERP for last 10 years. Further to that, we have all our network, all our plants across India, all connected together through MPLS line. We have a centralized data center, DR, DCTR. These are all routine things. See, not only that, beyond that, in the last 3 years, we have become all our processes. We have automated, we are digitalized, I can say. Today, we can proudly say, not today, more than a year now, we are at zero paper office. Nobody thought we can become a zero paper office. That is the benefit of technology we got it, and that is why we could survive the difficult time last year. Zero paper today, not only zero paper office, we were totally virtual office also. Of course, now there is a lockdown, so we are coming to office, but today we are fully prepared to work from office, from home, except the core staff, the OIM staff, they have to in any way come to the plant. So that is the level we have reached through adoption of technology only. And seeing the benefit of technology today, there is, we are exploring how we can, introduce new technologies, emerging technologies. The main thing is there is a lot of potential. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of data also available. So how we can use this data, and with the help of AI, we can improve our processes, how we can predict things, how we can some kind of foresight into the future. That is the area where we're working. So the problem is that we don't have that much expertise. So we have two approaches. Either we can straight away, go to a party and give the problem, let them work out a solution, or we can develop our own resource also. So we have taken a kind of a mid approach. Yes, we cannot totally depend upon, others. At the same time, it is a new technology. We also cannot do everything on our own. So we are in touch with the various vendors. We are discussing, and some RFPs already been prepared, and we also internally developed a team, a core team, and I've been trained by IIT Kanpur for the last 3-4 months, especially on this new technology. So we have taken up new challenging process, challenging what you call kind of problem areas which we are working on that. So technology is the only thing which will now help us, that everybody knows. Now, we being, with all humility, I'll tell we being a leading power sector in the, under the ambit of Ministry of Power, the ministry also expects a lot from us. So under the, under the mighty Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, a center of excellence being set up now for technology. So in which we are the lead partner, a lot of discussion going on. So they will be, collecting problems not only from NTPC, all power sectors. So we have to work together and use technology to solve problems. That is going on. We have done recently. We have done RPA as another major project. That is, we found that a lot of benefit with RPA building commercial building is a huge process. A lot of manpower is required, a lot of efforts are required. Totally, we have automated now to RPA. I mean, the last region we could we are supposed to do by 31st of March, which is very much on track. So, I mean, we are seeing the benefit of technology, how much it is helping us not only to cut down time, but to reduce manpower, to expedite things. Going forward, another area which we find today technology has gone a little forward is our cloud. So far, we are managing our own data center. Going forward, we find it is data center, just a data center will not serve the purpose, because we have to, hire more services. Just a data center will not serve purpose, because our requirement also come all on a sudden. Not only computing power, not only storage, even we need SAS also for our requirements. So we are going for creating our small application. Critical application is something which will remain on premise as of now. That will take a call. See, our
sorry to interrupt.
One area of concern is that our main business.
Sorry to interrupt, Sri Kalidas. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Kalidas. Can you please wind up?
That being critical infrastructure, recently there were a lot of talks about attack from China. So that is an area that will remain totally separated from IT network. All our functions will be automated. Those OT side will be a separate island. We will be doing improvements, separately. That cannot be connected to outside. That is one of the, I can say, limitations we are having. All that I can say is
Mr. Kalidas
is yeah.
Mr. Kalidas.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
tell me.
We have got it is almost 7 minutes now, and you have to wind up in the next level. We'll also talk about the way forward and other kind of things. I'm sorry.
I almost done. I have done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Speaker will be Sri Abhishek Agarwal from ESL. Sri Abhishek.
Hi, good evening. Hi, good evening, my fellow panelists, as well as the moderator and the organizing committee. Yeah, regarding the ESL, I think most of you must be knowing, because it's the energy sector, and we are a ESCO. So Energy Efficiency Service Limited is a ESCO. So we are the first company who is working as a ESCO in India. And as a ESCO, we are implementing number of projects. In last 6 years, we have implemented number of projects. Like if you have seen the Ujala scheme, where the Prime Minister has launched this scheme in 2015, we were able to launch number of, we have reduced the LED bulb, which was coming in 310 rupees. Now it is coming in 38 rupees from ESL. And the same type happened with the street lights also. We have implemented around 1.13 crores street light on the streets, and everything is got to change to the street LED lights. Why we are doing so? Because the normal conventional lamps or the conventional lights is taking too huge. They are consuming lots of power. By using these LED bulbs and lights, we were able to reduce the consumption. So if we talk about the Atmanirbhar Bharat, so technology-wise, if we talk about the hardcore technology, like the discussion is all about the IT, but if we talk about the non-IT perspective, so there we are able to give the guidance to our vendors. Vendors are able to put in lots of money for creating such type of technology where they are able to reduce the cost, because the tender volume is so huge. They are able to make the money in that also, and they are able to reduce their pricing, what they were generating, what they were putting into generating the bulbs, etc. This is one area where we are working, and we are putting. Now we are in the electric vehicles also, and we are generally tying up with multiple ministries, PSUs and all, where we are trying to put the energy audit also into the picture. Now we are trying to do the energy audit of different buildings, and we are trying to find out where the energy is getting lost. So we are having certain energy auditors with us. They are going at the site and they are analyzing the entire pattern, and we are trying to save the country from that wastage of the energy. And recently we have also done for the MSME also. So MSME is the number of problems we are finding out where the MSMEs are, because of the cost they are going for the non-efficient meter, non-efficient, you can say the these pumps, motors, etc. There also we are improvising the technology in the sense. But And in addition to this, smart meter is also the one of the critical program for us. So like our honorable FM also, finance minister also told in the last budget meeting that we are trying to, in 3 years, we are trying to complete the 25 crores of smart meter. I'm not sure whether it will complete or not, because it depends on our manufacturing pipeline also, the same thing, and certain other scenarios. But yeah, smart meter will be the totally, you can say that it will change the entire scenario of India. In this smart meter, entire technology will come into the picture. So if we talk about the UK, the same model we are trying to adopt in India. UK was this type of project has completed 2020 itself. So what they are trying to do, each and every equipment of our house will be monitored. So if we talk about the data is electricity for us now. Each and everywhere data is electricity, not oil, it is electricity. Earlier I was in petroleum sector, so I was telling data is oil. Like Mr. Ambani told, now we are talking data is electricity for us. Everywhere it is available now. Oil is available in certain pockets only, but electricity is available everywhere. So data is everywhere. We are trying to take out this data, and we have to tie it up with number of ULBs and all, how to create the data lake out of that. So and if we talk about the ESL, right now, like I joined 1 year back, this ESL from the Ministry of Petroleum. So in 1 year, we have tried to change the landscape. Like Mr. Kalidas also told that we are trying to go for the, like number of PSUs now are in the race of doing this paperless office. You must have seen. So we have also launched the NIC e-office we have launched. We have also migrated our mailboxes from the Google to Microsoft Office because of the like new DPR guidance as data protection bill has also come, and data center has to be in India. And number of applications, like we have seen number of applications we are trying to implement here. Regarding the pandemic, we were able to, like we were also coming regularly because we are also coming in the energy, like essential services. So we are also coming into the office, and we have generated number of town halls and all. We have done it using the technology itself. So if 5 people were coming, including my chairman and MDs and all, they were all coming. I was also coming, only 5-6 people, and the town hall was conducted from this place only. Although people were there. So technology advantage, people, if you see this is a PSU environment. So PSU, if you see the technology wise, people are not so adept. Sorry to use this word, but I have seen like there is a different type of people are there. So they are not ready to adapt the technology. Whether you create if you give them audio also, they will not try to use it because they will see why I will use the technology. So this is the COVID, although it's in the negative sense, but it is a positive sense for the technology point of view. People were not having anything to do it. So whether they like it or not, they had to use the technology. So people who were not ready to run the WebEx platform, Teams platform, they come, they join, they were do it, they were ready to do it. Even e-office we have launched in the COVID only. So I joined in March. In June 30th June we have launched this e-office, and it was successful because of the COVID, because people were not having any option to run the files in e-office. So that was some of the advantage what we have found out from the like COVID also, that we were able to do number of projects. In future also we are planning to do some of the project like Cloudy and all, although we are on the cloud, but I am planning to do actual cloud technology. Right now we are on the static servers, something like that. Servers are placed in some of the data center. So my time is over, so the other panelists can go ahead, and then yeah, in future I will just discuss more.
Excellent, Mr. Abhishek. Thanks a lot for sticking to your time. Yeah, our next speaker is J. Murugadas from Shipping Corporation of India Limited. But before next speaker speaks, I just want to make one clarification. I beg all of the speakers' pardon because I should have mentioned, because when actually I was talking about technology from an economist point of view, it is not just IT. It can be anything. Artificial intelligence, all kinds of internet-based and all kinds of those things are of course there. But then definitely, here in fact we are talking. Let's say, for example, if we talk in terms of a power sector company like NTPC. So obviously, the technology might be different, but of course, there will be some amount of technology. So I would rather request and urge all the speakers to, take technology or, perceive the technology in that context, and then, make their own comments, make their own expert comments. So over to Sri J. Murugadas. Please, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Abhijit. Good afternoon, other panelists and the viewers. Let me give a quick introduction of my organization. Shipping Corporation of India is a Navratna central public sector undertaking in the maritime logistics sector, serving the nation for the past 60 years. It's a premier shipping line that owns and operates around 1/3 of the Indian tonnage. SAA has a national and international presence. SAA, under the able leadership of our Chairman and Managing Director, Mrs. H.K. Joshi, is relentlessly working towards the growth and prosperity of the company. Madam has a vision of taking this company as truly world-class international shipping company. To achieve this objective, she's imbibing a digital-first mindset and data-driven decision-making practices in the organization. We have very efficiently managed the lockdown using technology. This almost all the speakers spelt it out. Yes, it was both a challenge as well as an opportunity. It has brought in a lot of changes across the organization, and the people have realized how technology is very important during the trying times. But the pandemic has changed the way we have been doing our business, especially SAA being a logistics company. The customer expectations, compliances, quality of service, safety, and other operational efficiency has gone through a major change. To address these challenges, our CMD has proposed a lean, nimble, and agile technology solutions that would enable us to work from wherever we are. So we are looking for a productivity anywhere kind of a solution. To meet these requirements, probably we have to look out for the key technology areas such as cloud migration, digital platform, RPA-based solutions, machine learning, and blockchain is one area which is very prominently being used by the maritime industry. Then, of course, for the operational efficiency, the tools which are digital tools need to be efficiently used. Of course, we should have a proper data protection and cyber security when we are going ahead with such kind of massive projects. SAA is currently having on-premise main data center in Mumbai and a disaster recovery site in Kolkata. We have various ERP applications implemented in the last 10 years with the SAP and non-SAP shipping specific applications, which are integrated using NetWeaver modules. Of course, the first step for our digital transformational journey is towards migrating to the cloud. So we are working on the cloud migration strategy. We may also consider virtual desktop solutions and implementation of collaboration tools to improve the productivity of employees. In any logistic solutions, the digital platform is the best approach today for service delivery and customer-centric solutions that are getting implemented through these digital platforms. SAA has a service delivery model directly to the customers and through agency network across the globe. Hence, we are envisaging a comprehensive solution for both B2B and B2C activities. There's a scope for implementation of AI-driven chatbots and quotations, automated quotations based on data-driven algorithms. These are all like a vision. Such platform-oriented solutions can be implemented for other stakeholders also, such as employees and vendors. So we can build APIs for a lot of integration points with external compliances such as customs, ports, and GST network, etc. Our friend has mentioned about RPA. So RPA is one area where we can really improve upon. So we can think of implementing for processing our massive vendor payment processes, etc. So this is one area. And the other area which, as I was mentioning, is a blockchain. I think IBM is aware because they have worked along with another shipping company to make this happen, to create smart ledgers and smart contracts to release bill of lading in the shipping sector. Then every ship in our case our shipping is a very unique case. So every ship is like a floating factory for us. So it's a huge challenge for us to operate with efficiency, and it depends, operational efficiency depends predominantly on managing our ships effectively. So we are looking for different digital tools that can be implemented on board the vessel and monitored from the shore-based staff to monitor various commercial, technical, and operational parameters with a fixed KPIs. Well, the last topic is about cybersecurity, which everybody is aware. When we launch such kind of massive projects, we all need to be extremely careful with respect to our data, privacy, and the cybersecurity to be taken care of. Digital transformation in our, we all know, is a big journey. It's going to be a long and challenging for all of us. So let's take the challenge ahead and move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sri Murugadas. And now our next two speakers will be from the Infosys and IBM respectively. I would like to first invite Sri Karthikeyan Nilakandan from Infosys.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me, Mr. Abhijit.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, the organizers and IBM for inviting me for this particular panelist discussion. Infosys started as a $250 company back in 1981. Never did we imagine that we will become a $14 billion company. We take a lot of pride in the fact that 3 of our founders have been Padma awardees recognized by the government. And when this whole Atmanirbhar Bharat drive came, we probably are one of the organizations which wanted to redouble our commitment to the domestic market. Many of you would know that we process 90% of the country's tax payments of over 22 lakh crore, be it the retail payments or the indirect tax payments like goods and services tax, GST network, or the customs and excise. All that processing is done by Infosys. In fact, there is a very interesting case study uploaded on our company website about how the GST has set up a BIFA, or a Business Intelligence and Fraud Analytics Group, where over $50 million of saving has happened to the government because of using analytics and data lake technologies for minimizing frauds and improving the compliance on the GST network side. So if you do get time, you can take a look at that, where we have kind of we have aggregated huge amount of data, whether it is more than 500 million tax returns filed, or more than 9 billion of invoices, and 1.5 billion of e-way bills. So we have brought all these together along with data from external sources like customs, direct taxation systems, and then we have kind of built a massive kind of a graph database. We've migrated over 100 terabytes of historical data over 3 years of from GST application stores, set up a 200 million node graph database, and then help the government realize some of its objectives of detecting tax evasion, revenue assurance, and kind of creating statistical insights for policymakers. Now, so analytics and data is one huge area where we are seeing kind of lot of impact on the PSU side as well. Very recently, we started a work for Indian Oil Corporation. This is around setting up a data management platform for industrial IoT and data analytics. In this case, IOC is implementing kind of an IIoT, or an industrial Internet of Things and data management solution across its refineries, pipelines, and marketing divisions for various use cases. This is not only limited to tracking the equipment performance, predicting equipment failure, and continuous replenishment. This is used for enabling our client obtaining accurate real-time information about equipment status, performance, and improving the operations by providing insights using analytics. And this is something which we are increasingly seeing analytics and data lake related use cases that is being embraced by various public sector units, public sector banks, and various other government entities. Now, there are very interesting project that we undertook. In this case, this is for a Goa Shipyard Limited, and in this particular case, this client kind of had a problem of having to do ship maintenance. Ship maintenance, people who are in this industry know that it is very cumbersome, costly, and time consuming. And it's typically conventionally only schedule based maintenance is done. For this particular client, we did what we call as a condition based maintenance. We used artificial intelligence to assess and monitor the health of the ships. So we kind of extracted data from the past maintenance records, extracted time series information. We did exploratory analysis on that, and we were able to build models, train models, and able to do prognosis or prediction of the engine health. And this is called as condition-based monitoring. We were able to do it successfully. End of the month, January, in fact, the Chief of Naval Staff was also there to launch this. And now we are kind of expanding this to Coast Guard as well. This kind of successfully talks about the use of AI-based technologies on kind of areas like predictive maintenance. The same thing can be used for monitoring various other port assets as well, not necessarily only kind of engine monitoring in the case of ships. There are a few other examples also that I can give you where we are involved. Currently, there is an initiative which is going on, which is about setting up an LPG database across all oil marketing companies. Today, you will see that there are some citizens who are gaming the system. Now, once we have this database in place, it will become, it is used for deduplication across the oil marketing companies. And this is used for, we will ingest all the customer data, master data, and the transactional data onto this particular platform. And using data analytics, we will be able to slice and dice the data and get meaningful outcomes, and ultimately help the government kind of minimize fraud and pilferage related things on the LPG. So this is another example of the power of data and analytics, which we are seeing. Another space which we are kind of seeing action is in the area of augmented reality. So in the case of this particular oil refinery,
Mr. Karthik, I'm
yes.
sorry, Mr. Karthik, I'm sorry, because let us talk about all this in the next level. Next round we'll
Right.
talk about.
Okay.
Let me invite. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have limited time, but we can't do anything else. But let me invite Sri Ravi Jain from IBM. You have to unmute, Ravi. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I had started talking on mute. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the speakers who spoke before me. A lot of interesting things came about, and I was scratching out a few notes. What is coming out very clear in terms of technology is that it is, and for the sake of this discussion today, we are talking about technology with the perspective of public sector undertakings, and technology, not just IT. And it is very clear that advancement is something which is a given. New technology is, will keep coming in. One unique thing that we see in India is about the population of India, right? And anything which affects the mass of the population, right? the size and scale is such that the problems really become first of its kind. So naturally, the technology has a very important role to play in solving the business problems that our PSUs are facing. Specifically to IT, I think we can look at the last 20 years in 3 phases very clearly. One was the phase of ERPs, right? Or so to say, digitizing the IT as such, the core business process itself, whether it is manufacturing resource planning, ERP, and I'm talking about the basic 101 of manufacturing, which used to exist and which became IT enabled. As organizations gathered more data, right, the sort of reporting, getting insights from the data that existed in the organizations became important. The way we interact with the data, so whether it was through analytics, whether it was mobile, whether it was social computing, those are the things which burst the industry. And in the last 3 to 4 years, we have clearly seen that IT can be the offering itself. And that is where we have so many services, so many products which are enabled by IT. And this thing was exactly going on an overdrive till the pandemic came in. And what pandemic did was to put the spotlight back on the core IT itself. How do I keep my lights on? How am I creating high availability? How am I creating resiliency in the infrastructure? And organizations which were prepared, they were able to successfully deliver the continued business or continued delivery of their offerings to their clients. And now we are in a place where I would say that digital transformation is bringing in workloads which require cloud as a capability. And cloud is not just public cloud. It's a mix of, on-premise, or it could be multiple number of public cloud. It is not just one. So hybrid is something that we really see coming through. And it is like changing your tires while you are driving the car, in the sense that you have a lot of setup which is already there. The existing technology has to mingle with the new one, which helps in getting the real value out of the data. And that is exactly where a lot of work is happening today, where we are seeing that how do I make sure that it is not just about improving efficiency, but it is about classifying the market better, classifying the clientele better. Karthik did talk about the kind of being able to forecast things before they happen, and the future of that is better than real-time decision making, right? And that is where the exact work is happening on the National Supercomputing Mission as well. So I will leave it at that, and these are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share today.
Yeah, but thanks a lot, Ravi, to stick to your actually before time you finish. So I will just in the next we let us have the question answer session, and then what I can really figure out from all the speakers' opinions and whatever interventions they made, that there is a already there is a synergy, some outline of synergy which is coming out, from the requirement side and from the provider side also, because I can see that, and which is very heartening and which is a very good thing for the economy itself. But anyway, let me start in the same order to to Mr. I'll start with Mr. Sarkar, and then you have adequately explained that how Central Electronics Limited is operating the entire thing, and then I would ask you, the first question will be, in what way emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and cloud and things like that, those can benefit your organization? That is number one. That is one. It's a kind of a broader kind of a question. The second question which I need to ask, that correct me if I am wrong, but what I gathered from your intervention is that you do a lot of defense equipment also. So there, in fact, the national security is I believe will be pretty important, very, very crucial in your operation. So how do you, through technology, trying to address all these issues? Mr. Sarkar.
See, we are basically electronics company and developing the technology. There are some technology having relevant with the internet, and most of the technologies at present that we have and mostly are electronics based. We are not using much, but there are a lot of scopes because see, internet, IoTs, this fourth generation technologies all are basically a tool for automation and managing the systems. However, at present we are managing the system in place of operation and the activity point of view, office managing, office processing, procurement, all these things we are using the internet. But as far as the technology is concerned, at present we are not adopted so much, but we are definitely will go for automation. Some of the manufacturing facilities are already automated. There are some of the technologies are yet to do. Yes, this is very important area, that automation by using the internet, IoTs, and artificial intelligence. There are a lot of scopes are there, so that in future we'll do. As far as the defense is concerned, the technologies that we are developing at present or our security is concerned, and mainly we are taking the technology from the DRDOs and the developing the technology for the defense only. And of course we are trying to mobilize this technology to outside the countries also. And there are technologies which are really the jointly technology as well as software oriented technology that it is under process. That is a big technology we are going to develop. It is at present I am not going to disclose because of security point of view and our technology point of view. It is basically the election point of view, so I am not in a position to disclose. There are technologies which is interconnected with the technology as well as the internet. So it is a big technologies are going to come very soon, and that will be a big revolution, I will say, in this country. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Sarkar. Because of course, nobody has to, none of the speaker has to, divulge any of the secret, whether it is in national interest or whether it is in the respective company's interest. Of course, you don't have to say anything. We are just having a broader discussion, of course. Now, the next one I would to Mr. Kalidas. Then he also, in fact, Mr. Kalidas has taken out quite a few, interesting subjects also while interviewing. And, I would rather like him to, that a little bit elaboration on the middle path that he was talking about. He was talking about where, in fact, he said that, they are somewhere in the middle of outsourcing and developing internal skills and creating a separate department. So that is number one. And second one is that, second question that I would like to put to Mr. Kalidas is that ultimately important point which he made is that it is a question of survival. So when he is talking about that technology adoption as a survival for the PSU, what did he mean? I would like, as moderator, I would like to listen to more about on that. Mr. Kalidas.
Thank you, Mr. Abhijit. I think I would like to ask the second question first. When I said survival, not in a very that true meaning of it, but when it said without technology, you cannot do anything. See, I mean, you have no ability, you have no agility, you have no control. So my point was that today, anything you want to positive, anything you want to quick result, only technology can help you. Otherwise, it will take years. By the time what you think of it is irrelevant. That is the meaning of and definitely when I survival it leads to competitiveness also. Today, let me tell you, in our organization, in any kind of meeting, be it board meeting or any issue meeting, any difficulties, be in project implementation, be in performance, be in safety, you know, IT is also asked. You look at from IT point of view how we can improve it. So there is a feeling that IT can do something in all areas, and that's a fact also. You know, not only in, even cost cutting, cost control, succession planning, career planning, everything but what IT can do. Definitely, there is, we have a lot of data, analytics. These are things IT can do. So survival payment in that context only. Second thing is you asked about this middle path. See, middle path. What I meant is yes, you cannot master everything, but at the same time, we cannot be at the mercy of everything. That is what we believe. These are technical source. We have some potency. So what we said is yes, new technology will adopt it, but there is no point in simply giving everything to vendors and then depending fully on them. We should also improve the technology slowly. So that is what I meant. Ideally, we look for a kind of build, operate, transfer, that kind of a model. So that somebody come associate with us, build a model with us, then we will pick it up, and ultimately we will own it. That is what I mean. We are looking for. I think I am clear on that. Mr. Abhijit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because very nice to hear from the perspective of the industry. Somebody from the industry. So, anything else you need to add? You want to add to that?
But
want to add anything?
That's it. It's here.
In the okay. Okay. Thanks. Next. Yeah, please carry on. Yeah.
The only thing what I want to add is that we have, we're lucky in a way that our organization, right from top management, everybody is open to adopt technology. That is something, we are lucky that way. That is what I want to add a special point.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. Excellent. So then next I would come to Mr. Abhishek. He also, in fact, talked about quite a few interesting, aspects of technology and, use of technology. So the first one is that, as he correctly pointed out also that, it is not only just about IT, it's about a hell lot of other things also. So that and when you are talking about energy efficiency, then of course, one has to think in all kinds of green technologies. I would rather, urge Mr. Abhishek to say a little bit about the, so-called quote unquote, green technologies which are emerging into the thing. And the second thing in which actually, extending, getting it from his intervention only. That, that generally the people are, to put it more precisely, the workforce in the PSUs are technology averse. Slightly, if not to a very great degree, but then of course there is a slightly technology averse. He said, but then I need a little bit of, and then how does his organization and he as a top executive will try to tackle with that kind of a problem. These two, Mr. Abhishek, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So regarding the first question, regarding the green technology, we are also having tri-generation, one of the arm like EPSL, we are having one organization with us. It's a subsidiary. So we are working on the tri-generation. So we are going in the different buildings and all, and we are trying to see how the cooling power and all, everything will be controlled by that company. We are trying to reduce the carbon footprint using that technology. If we talk about that. So green technology, if we talk about the data center also, we are trying to implement that technology. So green technology, we are working on that area also somehow. And if we talk about like our averse type of thing, what I gave the statement, it's something like that, like people are from the different point of view. Like if you see the public sector, because I worked in half of my career, I worked in the private sector. Or more of that. Like if you say out of 25 years, I worked around 13 years in a private sector. Then I worked in a DRDO, moved from private to government, then once again to the private, and then once again to the government. So I assume DRDO is a slightly different type of culture. because it's a scientific organization. Everybody is scientists, people want to run and people want to invent. So they are behind their technology. Okay. So there I have not found that much, you can say, the tussle between the IT and the other departments. Here, if I come to the PSUs, okay. So PSU is the head down approach everybody has to take. Like I worked in the Ministry of Petroleum where I was in a Bama lorry. So I think I have implemented approximately 73, 74 projects in 5 years, including the RPA we have done, IoT we have done, like you can say the e-office automation, digital strategy, everything we have done, whatever you can think over it right now. But the basic, how we were able to do it? Because we are having a management buy-in. First thing is that management buy-in is required, but second thing is that the foot down also is required from the management side. Everywhere, be it a private or a government, for a successful IT project is a CMD or MD and director's foot down is required at any cost. If they are not putting the foot down, nothing will come down. People will not be able to ready to the job. And especially in the public sector, people will be strict into their KPTs. This is my KRA, I will not go ahead out of this. So how we have done it? We have incorporated everything in their KPTs in Bama lorry. So if everything is, if I have to run the SAP, 10 marks is in the KPT. Even I talk about the Vodafone, if you know, it's a huge organization. And I was managing their entire transformation project called MDocs. IBM was also involved in this, and TCS, lots of people were involved. Even MDocs was also involved in that. How it was running? We have incorporated in all the CEOs. We told our business sponsors, sir, if you, they gave me that timeline when I joined Vodafone, they gave me the timeline 9 months, this project has to go live. I told only first thing I need, everybody, every CEO has this MDocs project in his KPT. That's all. As soon as it came into his KPT, entire downwards, entire team was in this KPT. People were supporting me. So that is the main thing, how we can deal with this situation. Another thing is that, okay, we can give the change management all I was doing regularly in all the companies. But first, this thing is also required. Even people ask me why you need only, every time CIO needs a senior management support. But the thing is that only CIO people will not listen. Everybody has to understand the basic problem. This is a basic problem in every organization. Like your department will not listen to me. Other department, we need to convince these guys. So the guys will get convinced if the pressure will come from the above. So these are the things. And right now what we are doing, we are trying to develop mobile apps here like EV vehicles, EVCI. You must have seen lots of electric EV charging infrastructure you must have seen. So we are also tying up with Delhi government and other government, BHEL and all. So we are trying to develop different type of mobile apps. Even I am trying to give, I have given the idea, I don't know whether it will be successful or not in my company, but I am giving the idea to use the infotainment working with the EV. So each EVs right now, whatever, like I am having Nexon with me. So, and we are also supplying Nexon. So EV Nexon is having infotainment, but it is not tracking my movement right now. If I put if I go to the service station, then only they will come to know. But I am trying to extract this figure and I am going to give it to my company. If everybody, where we will track it. So we'll give a better customer experience to all our ministry and wherever we are supplying the EVs. So if any fault is coming, using the IoT and that infotainment, I will be able to come to know easily. So that is how we are trying to use this. And for the street light also, we are working on one application. It's a very small application if we talk about that from the IT point of view, like let long and all, everything everybody knows now in this world. So what we are trying to do, we are developing an application. I think maybe within 1 month or 2 months, we will able to launch it. Wherever somebody is, we get lots of problem in the complaint center. So sometimes a problem, people are just giving this street light is not working. And if you see half of the time is the people who are working for the national cause. Like generally people are not aware where to give the complaint. But people like me or somebody, like I was also not in the ESL, but I was giving complaint why this is not working. So one thing, some type of people, you must be knowing lots of people are there who are doing the CSR work. So these people are there. So they should know where to give the complaint of this street light is not working in the night. So we are trying to develop, if the person is standing, just read the lat long automatically, just give the complaint, automatically the complaint will launch and people will be able to sort it out. This is an application we are trying to work upon it right now. Apart from the other day-to-day operation, lights are on and all, that is also going on. And then CCMS also, we are having a plethora of data. Like I was telling, data is electricity for me. So one is a CCMS, we call it CCMS, Central Control Management System. If you must be knowing that all the street lights are connected to CCMSs. So one street, 10 street lights, they are connected to one CCMS. Somewhere 5 street lights, or number of street lights varies from the one CC number of street lights depending on the wiring and all. We are collecting the entire data now. And our plan is that going forward, once anybody like you as a user will open our dashboard, you will be able to see India map and you will be able to see only green light, red light and orange light. Green light means lights are on here. Red light means lights are not working. Signal loss is orange for me. And if you go to drill down, you'll come to know some of the dashboards are still available, but not at this level. That is what we are planning. And if we talk about the data, it's approximately 40 to 50 terabyte data. I'm talking about in 1 year of all these 1.1 crore street light I'm talking right now. So we are working on this data, like Mr. Ravi also told, and the other panelists also from Infosys, like data lakes and all. So we are trying to use this concept now, data lake. So we are trying to use, and I think it will be helpful for the customers also for us, because when we are going to give them good lighting and all. That's all from my side.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Abhishek. Now I come to Mr. Murugadas. Then I learned quite a few new things from your intervention, because I didn't have any idea about a few things which actually you mentioned, because particularly when you said that and then when you were saying, then I was thinking within my head, and then I realized that when you said blockchain, then immediately I said the blockchain in shipping. Then I realized, okay, it's so obviously it is a, and then the entire maritime thing, whenever the entire thing is through the sea, it takes time, and you can't meet people here and there. So every ship is different, and every ship is at any given point of time, it is everywhere. It's a chaotic kind of a world. So of course you will be using all those kind of things. So then it's fascinating. But then my question would be to you that once again, here in fact what Karthik was talking about, Karthik in fact talked about very extensively on data security. So I believe that what are you doing, because about the entire data security, because as Abhishek also pointed out, that he's saying data is electricity, but anyway, you call it electricity, you call it oil, you call it whatever you want to. But the point is that you start automating things, then you will automatically start generating a lot of data. In our country, data privacy is not very much appreciated. Definitely not by the general mass. Even within the policy makers, I have seen that it is not a very well appreciated kind of an issue. But even if I leave aside, let's say for the next 5 to 7 years, even if I leave aside the data privacy issues, what about security? Because your own the data shipping prices is dependent upon all kinds of company secrecies are also there. How do you deal with it? I would rather love to hear from you, from your side on this.
Actually, the blockchain is a concept which most of the shipping companies are now pitching on, mainly to do the ease of their transactions. Basically, in shipping, as you have explained, there are a lot of statutory requirements and transactional hurdles. Since the imports, exports, like both sides, you'll have to upload a lot of data. There are customs, there are port agencies, the shippers, consignee, bill of lading, releasing it, bankers, like there's a huge amount of, I wouldn't say huddling, struggle, the blocks, but the actual problem is that synergizing that data from each and every stakeholder, and finally, delivering the complete value chain is a big challenge. Of course, we can imagine the days it was done manually, and today, with a lot of initiative taken by Government of India, they have created platform like the person from Infosys was mentioning. Actually, the customs is now harping on the entire data has to be properly uploaded in time with a proper specifications and things like that. So there is a platform which is generated for doing ease of business, where the other stakeholders, like the shippers, consignees, like the customs authorities, the ports, international agencies, everybody has to completely come into a kind of, we should create a kind of environment where, because it's the same data which is flowing from one node to another. So for doing that, the blockchain will be an extremely a good solution and a proposition. IBM is the first one to jump into it, and they have done a consortium. Of course, SA is not part of it, and I think they have a consortium with other shipping lines. And it will be more successful when all stakeholders in the value chain be part of it. It will be extremely easier, and you can really see the improvement on the logistics side. And with respect to security, I also mentioned we really need to have a discipline. Data privacy, I think legal framework has to come up strongly from the Indian government so that, the data security aspects are, the privacy part is taken care elaborately. And there are tools which are emerging from various quarters. Of course, internationally, people are facing this problem. It is not only with respect to India. As you rightly mentioned, the more and more data we are going to bring in for analytics purpose, then more and more we have to be careful with respect to our data. We'll have to invest a lot of money on data security, authentication. We are talking about a cloud. The moment you go into the cloud, there should not be any compromise with respect to our data in the cloud also. So we are all presuming that the cloud will take care. But however, I would say the endpoint security is again in our hands. Any cloud vendor is going to say it's a shared responsibility. Nobody is going to say it's my responsibility, I'll protect your data. So the moment you talk about a shared responsibility, then a lot of activity, or rather a lot of secured environment has to be made from our client side also. So I think this is my take. But security is something which is a big subject. I think it takes a lot of time for us to discuss and debate with respect to security. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I agree. I totally agree on that point that it's a huge topic because even 1.5 hours just on data security and data privacy is inadequate because there is no doubt about it. Probably half a day is the correct platform at the minimum level to talk about data security and privacy. But still, since we are talking, I will once again, instead of course, I for Karthik, I would like to listen to whatever, other IT, the product innovation he may want to talk about. But also he was at the end of his intervention, he was talking about data security. Because of the, want of time, actually, I have to stop him. But let him put his own perspective also on this. I think, Karthik?
Yeah. Am I audible, Mr. Abhijit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I was just, let me finish what I was saying. I was just giving a couple of examples on the kinds of digital transformation that the conversations we are having with our clients. Some of those things, I gave you some examples. There are other conversations like I spoke to you about. I was talking to you about augmented reality and virtual reality. In the case of this one client in the oil and gas industry, this client, we are discussing around a kind of using AR for a worker assistance solution. This basically consists of some kind of an AR enabled headset, which will be worn by the worker, and a customized software will aid the worker. This kind of AR headset will provide instructions and receive commands from the user for workflow management or assisting the remote worker via conferencing and navigation within the warehouse and integration with their warehouse management system for inventory reconciliation. So these kind of use cases, we are having conversations with customers on AR, VR. That is a technology which we are seeing increased adoption, especially for things like, for example, another of our customers is using this for training freshers. Okay, in a refinery, when fresh people are joining, how do you maintain and follow all the necessary safety precautions? So for the purpose of this, they are using AR, VR related technologies. So like this, I spoke about data analytics being all pervasive. We spoke about use of AI for conditional monitoring and preventive maintenance in the case of ships. I gave you the example of AR, VR. Similarly, on the preventive maintenance also, there is another of these customers who use sensor-based technologies for kind of getting, looking at all their assets like pumps or flow meters, and then tracking that from a central command center, and looking at how to improve the mean time to failure of the various assets. So these are the kind of use cases that we are seeing, and we believe that these are all about a decade back. This used to be kind of start from the enterprise sector. Now what we are seeing a leapfrogging of technologies. If you look at the kind of technology which we have implemented for the national scale systems like GST and income tax, world's largest open source based indirect taxation platform, which we have implemented kind of every month. Last day, around 1.5 terabytes of invoice data is uploaded. So the scale and complexity which government and PSU sector is embracing is just fascinating. So to that extent, we are really encouraged with the kind of traction that we are seeing across all these technologies. And one final area, Mr. Abhijit, where probably we as an organization are lesser known within India, but then we are working with various kind of defense PSUs, is the engineering services. So we are seeing customers who want kind of expertise on designing complex curvature components. For example, with a defense PSU in the aerospace area, we are kind of working on how to design a rugged landing gear, or how to kind of help them with some of this airframe designs and wings, fuselage, tail assemblies, and such components, nacelle designs. Nacelle is basically the covering around the engine, and there is a detail in design work that is involved. So we are seeing that it is not some lower end kind of work. We are beginning to move up the value chain. We are doing higher end engineering services for no defense PSUs, and we kind of take a lot of pride in kind of not doing just the traditional technology data analytics work, that is fine, but more into advanced engineering services using autonomous technologies. Like about a couple of years back, we used autonomous technologies in our company's golf cart. Now we are kind of discussing about how can we use autonomous technologies for surveying ships, patrol ships. So we are trying to replicate that particular technology from a shipping perspective. How do you do video surveillance of assets? So we do believe that there are various facets of technology, including engineering services, which is increasingly adopted by PSUs. And we believe that this will kind of make us second to none. When we say Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are not compromising on all these things. In fact, the technology that we are driving with our defense PSUs is what we are giving Boeing, what we are giving Airbus. So to that extent, this is not some compromised technology. This is the bleeding edge of technologies which we are helping our kind of defense PSUs and other PSUs adapt. So I'll just pause here, Mr. Abhijit.
Thanks a lot. Now definitely I will come to Ravi, because there is as I said that now the contour is coming out. So from the provider side, Karthik spoke, but then I would like you also to speak in that line. And secondly, what I would like to ask you, the second thing that I want to ask you is that once again, it is about that entire data breach and data safety kind of thing. Because last year I wrote a paper, where I was totally astounded to see that the top data breaches in the last 10 years or so, 10 years or 15 years or so, almost everything actually happened either in USA and partly in China, So, and then these are all very big companies, like huge companies there. From in fact, the data actually got leaked, and then, of course, here, in fact, Mr. Murugadas correctly pointed out, because which I consciously avoided. Of course, there is a lack of legal framework, but even if we don't address that part, I'm just asking you the technology part of it. That is there any way that as a, I'm speaking from a very common consumer point of view, because financial consumer, or I'm holding just a mobile in my hand, and I'm using an app, and my data gets leaked. So what is your take on that?
Okay, so let me answer. Let me talk in two parts, right? One part is with respect to the digital transformation and what does it entail for organizations, and a lot of very relevant examples given by Karthikeyan, and we also heard from various speakers about what is the way forward. Now, as we look here, right, it is not something. The future is completely collaborative. I have an in-house capability, but I need a service provider which brings in the right domain expertise with the right business knowledge. So an IT vendor is no more an IT vendor, right? IT vendor is now required to have the business acumen as well to make things more relevant. Now, the moment we talk about the future being more collaborative, it automatically means that it has to be open. It has to be interoperable, which essentially means that the technologies that we are driving, okay, whether it is hardware, whether it is software, whether it is cloud, one of the basic tenets of what is going to be successful for organizations is how interoperable they are, because this is no more about a single data center. It is no more about a single public cloud. It is about how do I have a complete control over what I want to achieve with the data and the applications. So as an organization, the control has to reside with me and not with the vendor, right? It is a very basic thing. And that is where most of the innovation, so to say, is being led in terms of how do I make sure that I can run my workloads in various cloud platforms without really, spending too much into integration. The second aspect is about bringing in the data security part of it, and that is where, because we are talking about more openness, more collaboration, obviously that means that my data is going to travel a lot of places, or if not data, the intelligence is going to travel, right? Which means that intelligence resides in cloud, but it is going to have access to my data, which is on premise, right? Or vice versa. Now, that basically opens up two topics for us. One is data security, and the other one is data privacy. Now, they are two different. There is a difference between the two, right? Securing it is easy, right? We have, I lock the data when I'm sending it to you, and you have a key to open it, and you can see whatever I have sent to you, right? And security, encryption, these are the kind of technologies that have existed. Now, the challenge there is that for us, as organizations, the regulations change, and they will keep changing, because what you see in the market, what you see in the environment, you will figure out that there are 10 more policies to be done, right, to make sure that your data is secure. Now, what does that entail? Is the application really ready for all these changes to be deployed so fast, right? And that is where a new set of paradigms called pervasive encryption or a perimeter encryption, that everything that is inside it is secured, right? Those kind of technologies are gaining prominence, and I really don't want to get into a tech mode right now, but that is something for which we have solutions available in the industry today. The second piece is about privacy. Now, privacy means that I send some data to a processor, right? A processor, not the hardware processor, but an application which is going to process my data, whether it is blockchain, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning. You have different types of workloads. However, the application which is processing the data is supposed to see only, say, 3 fields out of my record, right? A customer record, it should be able to see only my mobile number and a name. It should not see my date of birth or Aadhaar card number, right? So now the work that we are doing on that front is the data which actually travels with a passport. Okay, you can so it has only got permissions to visit a particular place and to do a certain thing, right? It's like a stamp that you can go to this processor only and you will be able to do XYZ operations on the data, right? So that is something which is really important for organizations to look at. I'm not saying it is just the IBM technology, but this is the area which is very, very prominent nowadays. And as far as the the threats or breaches are concerned, and obviously they are very expensive security breaches, one thing to note is a lot of such breaches, a very significantly high percentage, is not because somebody from external world came and stole our data. It actually got vulnerabilities were there within the system, and a lot of so-called insider threats or insider breaches have led to those cases of breaches. Now that actually brings us to a point where if I am an administrator, right, my privileges should not allow me to see or use the data of customers, right? I should be able to do operations, but I should not be able to see the data. And that is where we are talking about making the data admin proof, right? And that is some of the work that we are doing in terms of, making sure that even from an insider super user privilege or an administrator privilege also, you can secure your data, which is, of paramount importance. And going forward in future, we know that the penalties with respect to security breaches are going to be really atrocious. And we know what is there in GDPR, and we also have our own, things which are in the evolution mode, and which is something which is going to, unfold or unravel as we go forward. So that's all from my side, Mr. Mukhopadhyay.
Yeah, so my last, of course, it's a huge horizon and a huge area. We can't cover everything, but I think within 90 minutes time we have covered good grounds, and then let us put an end to it, because we all realize that ultimately, but before whatever I before concluding, any other speaker want to say anything in any context, any last thought or whatever, anything from any other speaker? If not, then I just conclude and hand it over to Mr. Sharma, Karthik Sharma. So anyway, then is it fine? Okay. So then what I would like to say that PSU by itself, as an economist, I know PSU is not a very homogeneous entity, because as very correctly some of the PSU speakers, they pointed out also, there are excellent performers also, but on the other end of the spectrum you have the not so good performers. So of course the dealing with technology will always come, and once you start automating, then of course there will be some loss of employment, that is also there. And secondly, that the companies have to be empathetic. I'm not only talking about the PSUs, I'm also talking about the private companies, because I can possibly talk about the example of maybe TCS, because I can see, because I when from my business school teaching experience of around 7 years, where I used to teach case studies, there I know that TCS actually has a lot of empathy for their workers. That is why they don't immediately sack their employees just because a new technology has come and some of the workers have become obsolete, because it's human mind cannot become obsolete. So obviously they retrain, they reskill, they give ample opportunity to those workers to upgrade, and then they get into the entire things. But I am going even beyond that. Even whenever you are talking about automation, somewhere some people will lose some amount of job. The fashionable thing to say is that people say that there will be new jobs, but in my mind, I am pretty clear. The creation of new jobs, the number of new jobs are always less than the destruction of the existing jobs. So one needs to figure out some amount of middle path over there in a populous country like ours. And then, but then of course, there is a lot of possibilities, and I am very glad to find out that, as I said again and again, that, from the provider side of the products and from the user side of the product, a synergy is somehow emerging, which is a very heartening and which is a very, good thing, I think, for all those companies and for the economy in general also. So I would like to be optimistic. I would like to be, the PSUs to flourish as much as possible. And then, from the private side also, some amount of synergy. I also hope for that. And privates will also take care of all the concerns that I just talked about. And then, more or less, I think that is how possibly we can get out of, because this pandemic is going to affect us. Personally, what I believe is that in spite of a lot of GDP optimism, this pandemic is going to affect us a lot. Because from the IT industry viewpoint, probably one may not, feel the pinch, because IT actually boomed. So for obvious reasons. So, but then some of the PSUs from which the speakers have come here, they have also boomed, because, for example, the utility services and, particularly power and electricity and other kind of things, these are either emerging areas or they are very big areas which have actually flourished even during the pandemic, even during the lockdown. So, but then not every business entity is that much fortunate. So, of course, we need to spare a little bit of thought about those companies and those sectors also. But overall, I am optimistic. Let's say that, one synergy is coming out. We had a very fruitful discussion, but saying that, I will just give it over to Mr. Karthik Sharma.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abhijit and the panelists for wonderful discussion. May I ask Mr. Ravi to kindly quickly give a closing remark before I give a formal vote of thanks, Mr. Ravi Jain?
So, thank you, Karthik, and I won't take much time. I think we are already over a few minutes. So let me just thank all the speakers here. I think it was, first of all, thank you for taking your time out here and joining us today. It was good to see the perspectives coming in, and hopefully we will have solutions for the problems that we are facing as business, or the challenges that we are facing as a business. I would like to thank Karthikeyan for joining us here from Infosys side. Infosys has been a great partner to IBM, and they have, with Infosys, we have done hugely, massively successful projects. So thank you so much for being here, Karthik. And last but not the least, I would also like to thank Mr. Mukhopadhyay for being the moderator. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi. And again, I would like to thank IBM for this. Because of IBM, we could create this platform and bring all these leaders on one platform discussing on the digital transformation in PSUs. However, there's a lot of scope to discuss more and more on this topic, and we'll keep on doing that. And thank you, Mr. B.N. Sarkar, Mr. Kalidas, Mr. Abhishek Agarwal, Mr. Karthikeyan, Mr. Mugudas, Mr. Ravi Jain, Mr. Abhijit Mukhopadhyay for wonderful moderation. So we'll start the speaker certificate presentation. This is just a token of respect, appreciation, and token of thanks to eminent leaders who have spared their time and joined us in this panel discussion. And we present to you a speaker certificate. And we start with Mr. B.N. Sarkar, Chairman and Managing Director of Central Electronics Limited, CEL. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. And Mr. K.S. Kalidas, Chief General Manager in NTPC Limited. Thank you so much, Mr. Kalidas, for joining us.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you.
Next, Mr. J. Murugadas, he's General Manager for IT in Shipping Corporation of India Limited. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Karthik.
I thank Mr. Abhishek Agarwal. He's Chief General Manager and Head of IT in Energy Efficiency Services Limited, EESL. Thank you so much, Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Mr. Ravi Jain, Director of IBM Server Solutions Sales, India, South Asia. You spoke really well. Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And Mr. Karthikeyan Nilakandan from Infosys, Associate Vice President and Head of Sales and Client Services of India Business in Infosys Limited. Thank you so much, Karthik.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma.
And, thank you. And last but not the least, for wonderful moderation, our moderator for this session, Mr. Abhijit Mukhopadhyay, Senior Fellow of Observer Research Foundation, ORF. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhijit.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure.
So thank you, everybody. Here we conclude